The federal government is earmarking more than $900 million in new investments to the National Research Council of Canada under the country's defense industrial strategy.
It will be the first time that we will have a Canadian-built aircraft to do research here at home. We will be investing over $900 million in defense-related research and to strengthen Canada's industrial base.
For every $100 Canada spent on its own military defense, $75 went straight to the United States, not to Canadian workers, not to Canadian factories, straight south of the border. At the same time, Washington was imposing heavy tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, making open threats about annexation and questioning Canada's very sovereignty. So what does a nation do when its closest ally starts acting like its greatest threat? On March 9, 2026, Canada gave the world a calm, confident, and very expensive answer. The announcement came Monday morning at the National Research Council hangar in Ottawa. Industry Minister Mélanie Joly took the podium. The setting was not accidental. Drones, helicopters, and a brand new Bombardier aircraft surrounded them as they spoke. Together, they announced over $900 million in new defense investment, flowing directly through the National Research Council of Canada, targeting drones, aerospace technology, quantum systems, and biomedical defense.
This will allow us to develop new platforms for drone and aerospace technologies, including having a new drone innovation center, a drone innovation hub here in Ottawa at the NRC.
Minister Joly stated clearly, "We are living in a much more chaotic and dangerous world, and national security and economic security really go hand in hand."
And indeed, we are living in a much more chaotic and dangerous world, and we know that national security and economic security really go hand in hand.
This is not a minor policy adjustment. This is the first major financial deployment of Canada's brand new defense industrial strategy, and the scale of the announcement signals that something far larger is underway. But the real story is just beginning. Let us go through exactly where the money goes, because the breakdown reveals a complete picture. $500 million is allocated to two connected projects. First, the Drone Innovation Hub. Located in Ottawa and the Mirabel area near Montreal, this hub will develop, test, and commercialize advanced drone and counter-drone technologies for the Canadian Armed Forces. It bridges the gap between research and real deployment. Second, Canada is acquiring a Bombardier Global 6500 aircraft, assembled in Mississauga, Ontario, built with contributions from over 65 Canadian suppliers across the country. This will be the first Canadian-built aircraft used exclusively for domestic defense research, a platform that did not exist before today. $241 million goes to Canada's small and medium-sized businesses through the NRC's Industrial Research Assistance Program, specifically targeting companies that develop dual-use technology, tools that function for both civilian and military purposes. $161 million over 5 years is committed to quantum technology, covering quantum sensing, quantum-safe communications, and quantum internet networking. And $28 million launches a new biomedical countermeasures initiative, building Canada's independent capacity to produce vaccines, therapeutics, and responses to biological threats. Every dollar, every project, staying in Canada. But where did this urgency come from? To understand why this moment matters, you need to understand what Canada's military looked like just months ago. Figures obtained by CBC News painted a difficult picture. 54% of the Royal Canadian Navy's ships were classified as not serviceable. 55% of Air Force aircraft were deemed unfit for operations. 46% of Army vehicles could not be deployed. Canada was spending roughly 1.37% of its GDP on defense, well below the NATO target of 2%.
It's all part of Canada's plan to meet its NATO commitment to spend 2% of GDP on national defense this year.
Prime Minister Mark Carney said it plainly. 75 cents of every capital dollar spent on defense goes to the United States. That's not smart. That admission from a sitting prime minister forced a decision. In February 2026, Canada launched its first-ever defense industrial strategy, backed by $6.6 billion, drawn from the $81.8 billion total defense commitment made in Budget 2025. The NARC itself was founded in June 1916 during the First World War. During the Second World War, It helped transform Canada from near zero industrial capacity into a nation producing dozens of aircraft and thousands of military vehicles every single week. Minister Joly referenced that history directly. We've done it before. We can do it again. And this is where the situation becomes more complicated.
When we entered the war in 1939, Canada had nearly no defense industrial capacity. But by June 1943, the Globe and Mail was reporting that 900 women and men were per week producing 80 aircraft per week, 4,000 motor vehicles, 450 armored fighting vehicles, plus munitions and explosives. And of course, many Canadian companies tie back to Canada's world efforts and afterwards. Maybe think, of course, of Bombardier, Magellan, CAE, Javelin. Now, the NRC was first created during the First World War to coordinate and promote scientific research that could contribute to national war efforts. And of course, its mandate evolved over the years, but it was fundamental to us being able to develop our airspace capabilities and navigation systems that were so performant that in the end we were able to help allies win the Second World War.
What does all of this mean for ordinary Canadians? Start with jobs. Canada's Defence Industrial Strategy sets a target of 125,000 new Canadian jobs by 2035.
And our goal is also, through these different investments, is also to create jobs. And our objective is 125,000 jobs across the country, to increase by 240% the revenues in the defense sector, and also to increase by 50% our exports in defense.
The Bombardier Global 6500 aircraft alone creates employment across Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia through the Cascade Aerospace supply chain that stretches coast to coast. For Canadian businesses, the shift is profound. Currently, only 30 to 40% of federal defense contracts go to Canadian companies. The new target is 70%, awarded to Canadian firms within the next decade. That is a fundamental reversal of how defense spending has worked for generations. The economic projections support the ambition. Total Canadian defense industry revenues are forecast to grow by more than 240%. Small and medium-sized businesses stand to gain more than $5.1 billion in annual revenue under the new framework. Canada's defense exports are also expected to rise by 50%, supported by new trade deals already signed with Denmark and the European Union, opening international markets that are not dependent on Washington. This strategy is not just about protecting borders. It is about building an economy. But something else is happening behind the scenes. Just days before Canada's strategy was made public, President Donald Trump signed his own executive order. He called it the America First Arms Transfer Strategy. Its stated goal is to make the United States the world's #1 arms manufacturer and exporter. Two neighboring countries, decades of shared defense history, now building competing domestic arms industries at the same time. And here is the detail that deserves attention. Canada's strategy specifically redirects its steel and aluminum producers, the very industries most hurt by Trump's tariffs, to now supply the Canadian Armed Forces. American economic pressure is being converted directly into Canadian industrial output. The deeper consequences of this collision require careful consideration. Canada has committed to reaching 5% of GDP on defense and national security by 2035. Its current spending sits at approximately 1.37% of GDP. The distance between those two numbers is not incremental. It is a complete strategic transformation, requiring sustained political will, hundreds of billions of dollars, and delivery across multiple future governments. To support that scale, the Business Development Bank of Canada has separately committed $4 billion to the Defense Technology Platform, working alongside the NRC to scale Canadian companies into world-class defense suppliers. Crucially, all intellectual property must remain in Canadian hands. Canada has also joined the Use Safe program, support for ammunition and security Europe. This gives Canadian defense companies direct access to the European arms market, a market that operates entirely outside American control or influence. But a significant warning has been raised. Former NATO Assistant Secretary General Wendy Gilmore cautioned that Canada risks prioritizing economic recovery over genuine military capability. She said the danger is that the message becomes diluted, blurring the line between industrial goals and the Canadian Armed Forces' actual readiness. That concern is worth taking seriously. A nation can build impressive factories and still field an unprepared military. Canada is not confronting Washington directly. It is not issuing threats. It is not making demands. It is the methodical building of sovereign capacity in technology, in industry, and in global partnerships that no foreign power can take away or withhold. That is a different kind of strength, and it is growing quietly. Step back and consider the full picture. Canada spent decades depending on foreign suppliers, above all the United States, for its own national defense. That era is ending. The $81.8 billion total pledge, the $6.6 billion industrial strategy, the $900 million was announced this week, the 125,000 jobs targeted by 2035, the 70% domestic contract goal. Every number points in exactly one direction. Canada is not panicking under pressure. It is planning its way out of dependency. Whether $900 million is the beginning of a genuine transformation or simply the opening chapter of a very expensive promise, only time will answer. That question belongs to you. Drop your answer in the comments below.